Hi, I'm Helena from alphakoreanclass. Are you ready to learn the key point to understand the native Korean speaker's conversation? Then let's talk about it. Let's say you've studied Korean for at least a year and a half. In addition, you live in Korea and are even surrounded by Korean friends or Korean coworkers. Since you have studied Korean hard so far, your speaking skill should improve rapidly from now on. But it's weird. In order to talk to Korean, you need to be able to understand what the other person is saying, right? But you don't understand what they're saying. Sometimes you even think that what that person says to you is not Korean. You don't understand this situation repeating. So you decided to test your Korean listening ability on your own. You turn on Korean dramas on Netflix and listen to them recklessly. There are many words that you understand, but at the same time, there are many words that you can't hear no matter how many times you repeat them. You think it's probably because you don't know the word and turn on the subtitle to see what the word is, but oh my, it was the word you knew. How could it be? You remember how hard you studied that word. It's the word you've seen countlessly times on your flashcard. When you recall that fact, you feel like the Korean language may be the first foreign language you will give up because Korean is different from Spanish, French, even Chinese, that you have succeeded so far. Do you agree with this situation? If so, please watch this video until the end. Do you want to improve your skills in making Korean sentences? Then you should improve your intuition of essential Korean verbs and adjectives. Study essential words in depth by studying with top 200 Korean verbs and adjectives. For more information, check the link in the description box below. Then, let's get started. Why can't you hear anything? Because of the pronunciation? Or the words? Or the grammar? What's surprising here is that everything can be a reason. Today, let's talk about these three factors that you often miss when studying Korean. First, the reason why you don't understand Korean is that you don't know the essential Korean pronunciation rules, or you still can't clearly distinguish the pronunciation of individual consonants. Most learners focus only on learning Korean grammar or words immediately after learning Hangul. That's good, but it's necessary to check if you're mistaken for studying with that is good enough. I'll give you one example. You studied the word change, 변하다. You said 변하다, 변하다 to memorize. And you tried to memorize the conjugation of verbs as well. 변했어요, 변해요, 변할 거예요. Right? And one day, you overheard Koreans talking at a cafe. 너 하나도 안 변한 것 같아. And one day, you heard this conversation in a TV commercials. 하나도 안 변하셨어요. And you listened to it on the subway. 하나도 안 변했어. In this way, you keep listening without knowing what this means. And one day you find out by watching the subtitle of the drama. And you think, that's right, I've been hearing that these days. Well, I know that word, but why didn't I understand it before? If you listened carefully to the audio file from the beginning, you will have known that this word was not literally sounding. The basic form of this word is pronounced 변하다. The passive form is 변했어요. Future form, 변할 거예요. Okay? When combined with another ending, it is pronounced more complicated. 넌 하나도 안 변한 것 같아. 넌 하나도 안 변한 것 같아. 하나도 안 변하셨어요. 하나도 안 변하셨어요. There are two pronunciation rules applied here. One is elimination of who and other is liaison. I explained liaison last time, so please watch this video if you are not sure about this. Elimination of who is a pronunciation rule that except for who sound which is located first in the word, who sound is weakened or almost eliminated. Like this. 밤하늘, 말하다, 영화, 사랑해요. Korean don't pronounce the who sound in the middle of the word hard. On the contrary, what if you pronounce 밤하늘, 말하다, 영화, 사랑해요 literally? There is probably no Korean who doesn't understand your pronunciation. So no one will point out that your pronunciation is wrong. This is not a problem if you're well aware of the differences between native Korean and your pronunciation. But if you can't understand the word only when you hear it like you, that's a problem, right? So what's important here is that in order to understand the pronunciation of native Koreans, you need to get used to the pronunciation itself, even if you don't know the name of pronunciation rule. Second, let's say you're now used to the pronunciation of native Koreans. Nevertheless, the reason why you don't understand Korean is that you don't know the essential Korean phrases or expressions yet. In particular, in spoken language, complete sentences are not used as well as in written language. In many cases, markers that clarify the meaning of the sentence are omitted too. And there are so many additional words that are not related to other sentence components are also used. In addition, Korean spoken language is much more context depends than written language. So in this situation, communication will naturally become impossible if you miss the keyword. To be more accurate, it becomes difficult to hear if you can't predict the next word. What? Okay, I'll show you. For example, Koreans naturally think of the following verbs or adjectives when they look at the next noun and adverb. 감기에 걸리다. 눈물을 흘리다. 인기가 많다. 긍정적으로 생각하다. And these phrases can be modified and spoken in daily life like this. 감기 걸렸어? 아휴, 왜 이렇게 눈물을 흘렸어? 학교 다닐 때 인기 많으셨겠어요. 긍정적으로 생각해 보자고. As you can see, it's been modified and omitted a lot, right? Still, Koreans are automatically reminded of expression suitable for each word in common. So they're omitted countlessly times by context, assuming that everyone has such a same concept. And we can freely transform the sentences on the premise that they work. At this time, seeing how transformed, we naturally feel the other person's personality and attitude. If you want to get used to it quickly, it is a good idea to learn the meaning of the 200 essential verbs and adjectives in depth. We made that service already, so you can check it below. And you also will better look for proverbs or phrases in which the word is used. And if possible, try to learn nouns or adverbs that are often used together in chunk through actual sentence. The reason is that it can have a contextual memory effect. In general, the more familiar you know with Korean proverbs, the phrases that we use them often, the better you can listen to Korean. Third, let's say that you're now familiar with the pronunciation of Koreans and have studied enough expressions that Korean enjoy using. Nevertheless, the reason why you still don't understand Korean is that you don't know grammar. In other words, it's because you don't know spoken grammar. Here, I want to distinguish between written grammar and spoken Korean grammar. In general, most of the Korean grammar you learn as a grammar is written Korean grammar. Most of the textbooks written in Korean, novels, articles, and speeches and broadcasts conducted with written scripts are based on this grammar. However, the grammar that used in everyday Korean conversation is different from that. In other words, it is common to communicate with phrases that has no subject, no object, and no particle. In addition, there are many people with poor pronunciations or who speak extremely fast. So you will find out the spoken grammar is completely managed by context. So how on earth should you approach this who don't know the context unless you learn it? I'll give you a hint. Alright, in fact, I looked at the list of calls recorded on my phones to give you an actual example of today's video, and I was very shocked. The first reason was that I couldn't reveal my voice. Since I usually talk to close people on my phone, I was using very embarrassing and weird, cute voice. I didn't know my voice was so terrible like that. Second, there was so much information omitted that I didn't know what my mom and I were talking about for a while. There were stories and exclamations saying that something was delivered quickly, that the color was so dark, that my mom was surprised that it was bigger than she thought. While listening to it, I thought, so what is that? After I listened carefully and focused on the story, I realized it was about new couch. Korean, which I speak with close people like my mother or husband, is extremely omitted, so it will be like a secret code for you. But my conversation with the cleaning company was a little different. I said, please remove the sticker on the green door, like this. It takes the form of a sentence and we exchanged information relatively accurately. It was much less omitted. What do these two episodes mean? It means that it's easier for you to understand the conversation of Korean who are more distant than those of close Korean. So don't be so frustrated just because you don't understand two close Korean friends chatting on the subway. I also can't understand everyone's conversation completely in Korean. Also, even if I understand it, it is impossible for me to communicate with them according to their context. This is because if I participate in their conversation, the context of friends' talk will disappear immediately, and that will be changed into the unfamiliar people's talk, right? So there are people who get stressed just by hearing the context. However, the starting point of the context is the relationship between the speaker and the listener, the psychological distance. Unless you get close to native Korean psychologically, you won't be able to access the contextual words that they use only. There's the same for me. And contextual language is not something you can learn from textbook. You make it through experience. So do I. I don't know what words are used in the group that I haven't been to yet. I just know what I say politely when I first meet somebody. But I don't worry because everyone in the group will learn what new words to use. That's the core of spoken Korean. Context must be learned through experience. Alright, today we learned the key point to understand a native Korean speaker's conversations. How was it? if you like it, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe this channel and give me a comment down below. It really helped me out. And actually the small talk that I mentioned in this video, like pronunciation, expression, spoken grammar, are all very important. So I'm gonna deal with these topics later. So it's more details, the story will be held in a different video later. Okay. And next week is Chuseok, so I will take a week off. And I will come back next Sunday. And thank you for studying Korean with me so far. And you know what? You can do it because I'm with you, right? 그럼 다음 영상에서 만나요. 안녕!